Welcome everybody to today's session, the panel discussion around circular economy, and of course with a special focus on this topic. I welcome all of you, the experts which we have here in the call, to simply share their views, simply share your perspectives on this market. It's a new market and an old market at the same time, so I'm really curious on your perspectives. Let's start with the introduction of the participants, and maybe we can start with you, Adrian from BASF.
Thanks, Marco. So my name is Adrian. Since 11 years with BASF, always in a high radical innovation topic. Since 4 years in the digital, we tried to change the way we handle product safety and sustainability. And since last November, I'm the product owner of the digital product passport in Catena-X. Happy to be with you.
Perfect. And we learned that you were stranded now in the train, so that's an extra bonus for you. Thanks for joining. So then Philip from BMW.
So hello everyone. Philip here from BMW. I'm working within BMW within the digitalization department. I'm heading the use case circular economy within Catena-X, and happy to be here and share some thoughts about circular economy and how digitalization can leverage real sustainability change.
Perfect. Thanks for joining. And then we have the team Henkel, I would call it. So we have Melanie and Virgil. Let's start ladies first, of course. Melanie. You're on mute. You need to unmute. Sorry. Melanie, we can't still hear you. Maybe you try to fix it. And Virgil, you start with your introduction, and Melanie is trying to connect.
Yeah, so Virgil's my name. I've been with Henkel for 7-8 years now. Always in a project management or business transformation role. Project manager for Henkel IT, for Henkel DX, and dealing with a lot of circular economy and data topics right now.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Virgil, for joining. Melanie, second try. We still don't hear you. We still don't hear you. It's a shame. But okay, then let's go on. Melanie, you tried to reconnect. Holger from that's a long title. Your institute. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Holger Berg. I'm head of the research unit on digital transformation in the Wupper Institute for Climate, Energy, and the Environment. And my work goes pretty much into how can we use digital technologies to get the circular economy going, and how can we keep digital technologies from being the next big sustainability problem.
All right, thanks for the introduction. Then we have Jörg Walden from iPoint.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Jörg Walden. I'm coming from the IT side, having now 20 years of background in the circular economy, compliance, sustainability area, founder and ex-CEO, now strategic advisor of iPointSystems and a couple of other companies, all working in the space of sustainability, carbon, transparency, and social impact area.
Okay, perfect. Then we have two colleagues, Ralf from CGI and me. Ralf, your introduction shortly.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ralf Schipper, so I'm Vice President at CGI. I'm responsible for our automotive clients in southwest of Germany, and so I'm also coordinating our collaboration with the Catena-X Automotive Network.
Okay, and then short introduction from my side as the moderator, Mark Burg. I'm Vice President for Communication and Marketing in CGI for Central Europe and Scandinavia, and I have the pleasure to host you today and do the moderation. So last try, Melanie. Now, it needs to work. No pressure, but it needs to work now. It is still not working. It is still not working. Okay. No, sorry. Then you maybe try to dial in back again. We have Virgil in the meantime. So let's start. First of all, thanks for the introduction, and let's get right into the topic. So let us set the scene a little bit. Holger, to you, because you have a good overview on the market and the development in the past months, quarters, and years. So the topic of circular economy is actually not a new one, right? So no matter how you, or depending on how you see it, how you discuss it, it is already a lot of years or even decades old. But why is it getting now so much more importance, so much more attention? Why is it getting more airtime, basically? What is your perspective on this?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that play into this. First of all, I think there's overall, by all stakeholders, a more improved and stronger focus on sustainability. And specifically in the for companies, circular economies is one way of really becoming more sustainable, both on the resource side and on the energy and climate side. Obviously, there's also some regulatory activities, specifically on the side of the European Union, who is really pushing circular economy forward. And well, I think in the last couple of months, maybe last 2-3 years, we also see some material shortages in the markets, and circular economy certainly is one of the possibilities to also strategically work on a better supply for a number of materials and products.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's a valid statement. So that's what we see in the market. We see a lot of initiatives, Catena-X as a very prominent example. So, here we are. So Melanie, short introduction from your side. Now we can hear you. Perfect. The test.
Sorry for the inconvenience. It's okay, I'm from Henkel.
Yeah, perfect. Please repeat. Sorry.
The test was a couple of, okay. I'm from Henkel, and I'm the Global Sustainability Manager for the automotive section in our business. Thank you.
Okay, so now we made it. Excellent, and good to have you here in the team. So thanks for the introduction, Holger, and your perspective on it. One part of the circular economy is for sure also the focus on data, as some call it, as always, the new oil. Yeah, so this famous buzzword. But of course, it's obvious that data is now playing a more and more important part in the circular economy activities. So Adrian, from your perspective, from BASF perspective, so data models are actually required for the open exchange and are obviously very important. So what is your perspective on where are we currently, and what do you see as next important steps? So what is your impression on maturity, especially also with regard to BASF?
Well, there is actually lots to do because, as you say, data is the new oil, but I like to say we have to refine it to go up in the pyramid: data, information, knowledge, wisdom. So the data model is then the transformation from the data into information. And there we have to see that we come to the same language, the same standard, so that we can easily exchange information between the different stakeholders. And there is this famous word, interoperability, so that we can easily, between the different master data management system, identify what do I understand by carbon footprint, what is the real value, what was the methodology behind, so that we have a common understanding, and in best case, a common rule book, how we did come to that given standard. Where are we? So in Catena-X, we did actually build a kind of a rule book for the product carbon footprint assessment. We are building a first data model for the battery passport, which we want to even get to a more general view. It's the so-called information model, where we are completely system agnostic, but we can describe the different entities and the relationships and the attribute in it. And from BASF perspectives, going into the battery recycling business, it is a tremendous thing to really go together with Catena-X for that information model, because then we start to establish, together with the industry, the same language, how we then can track and trace information with the high voltage battery. Because at the end of the day, what we do with the PAS is to establish a digital twin, which is then based on that common language of the data model, and which then receives information over its lifetime, so that at the end of the use phase, we can, based on this information in the digital twin, come to a kind of scientific decision, or at least there is a common ground on which we can take a decision what to do with a part at the end of the lifetime. And that's why we are really pushing that, and I hope we will find also here in the community people that are interested in supporting us in getting that standard done in the industry.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so this is a very valid statement, or important statement from my perspective. because especially as you have the use cases, right? So there are many players in that ecosystem, many participate in the discussions, but of course we always, that's at least my perspective, should start from real industry use cases because they are driving it. You can think about a lot of stuff from a theoretical point of view, but of course the real use cases which bring value to the organizations, businesses or authorities is of course the benefit. In that context, Jörg, your company is, of course, also engaged in the topic of circular economy, and you're heavily working with data. Can you share us a little bit your perspective on what is your understanding of circular economy from a different angle, basically, and how do you as a company, want to be engaged in that topic?
Sure. I mean, if we heard what Holger and also Artigan is saying here is, if you think fully with the circular economy, it's an enabler for massive carbon reduction and material reduction. So we're sparing resources, we're reducing carbon. So it will help the industry to rethink the way how we build and should build and also sell products with, for sure, total new business models at the end. Yeah. And so if we believe in this position, I would say there's a big need for data. Yeah. And we are far, far away from where we should go here. And what's requested by many, many stakeholders, not only end consumers, governments, a lot of stakeholders, financial investors and others. So data is a mandatory requirement to move into this transition. Looking into organizations now, they are heavily siloed. Inside the organization, you have siloed. And if you go through this value chain, what I like to call also value circle, where we should go in the future, it looks even worse. Yeah? So we have a huge data gap, what needs to be closed. And it's clear, if you want to go real circular, you have to change the structure of the organization, the data system, and also the thinking of many, many, many people here. So this is where we are pushing tools, technology, and trying to enable the companies to close this gap and move into this direction, understanding the value of the data, understanding also product as a service, and understanding how we have to co-work and take responsibility for the product altogether, starting from material experts to recyclers. Yeah? To lifetime information. There's a lot of need and change in the business model, and we need to drive this in a different way. And this is where we want to support and help the companies switching into this organization and disrupt a little bit the business models they are driving today, what's quite linear.
You were addressing a very important point, Jörg. Data, and not just data, but also data exchange, right? Because this requires the interaction of many, many participants, much more than potentially in previous situations when we're talking about ecosystems and so on. Ralph from CGI, from our perspective as a service integrator or a system integrator. So what kind of change do you see actually currently? What is happening in the market with regard to trust, and what differences do you see previous years?
Well, I think especially the trust is a major topic. So the trust in this data exchange or in the data you're getting. So when we're looking at, for instance, the manufacturing industry or the automotive industry, you have a quite complex supply chain. So you have the suppliers, you have your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers along long supply chain, and you need to have this data along the supply chain to really get all your information you're building into your product. And so this is that there is a heavy need and an increasing demand of really exchanging this data, and with further digitalization, also the demand of having ecosystems and automated data exchange and also the IT support. But so you have to trust into the data you're getting from such a network. So if a company wants to build his material passport or product passport, or really using this data for his for its business, you have to trust the data you're getting out of such ecosystems. And so, for instance, with the Catena-X network, so in the automotive industry, as one of the major examples, it's exactly the reason to establish such a trusted data exchange entity and platform, so to be able to really have a trusted exchange that you're trusting in the data you're getting. And I think that's exactly what such ecosystems have to provide. And so Catena-X from the beginning built on such an open and transparent network. And really built also from a technical point of view. So when we're looking from a CGI point of view, also from an IT perspective. So Catena-X is also building on on standards which are also outside of Catena-X are getting more and more prominent. So like like IIX is one of the base technologies, or the International Data Space Association, which is used in several networks, and that's what Catena-X is building on top as well. And also the core part of Catena-X will also be heavily using open source standards, which is also our experience from IT side, that open source standards are really supporting also in trusting such networks. So differentiator currently, I would say, is really the principle of this openness and non-exclusive network. You're getting better trust.
That's exactly the point, and I would like to challenge that trust and ecosystem topic with Philip from your BMW perspective, because I can imagine that, of course, you have a very large and probably also heterogeneous ecosystem you have to work with when you want to exchange data. What is your personal experience when you look at BMW, and how do you interact with this ecosystem, especially maybe also including the large number or the higher number of participants in this ecosystem? How do you see also the role of smaller players? Can you consider them? Can you give them really a voice, or do they have to take basically what you define from your perspective? What is your real situation on a daily basis, basically interacting with those partners?
Mm-hmm. Well, currently, and the previous speakers mentioned that, there are a lot of challenges we are seeing within the market, and especially when it comes to circular economy. We have regulations coming up, and we have economical hardships currently within the market, and we're looking at supply chains especially. And when you just mentioned small and medium companies, they even they're feeling that a need for change, and for change in mindset, but also change of how to interact within ecosystems. There's even more pressure on them than there's pressure on the bigger companies. So we feel from our partners within the ecosystem that there's a need for change. And currently, when we're looking at the day-to-day business, exchanging data is a tough job. You have thousands of APIs, you have a lot of data models, you have a lot of use cases, and it's a costly job, right? And when talking about interoperability, like Adrian said, there is no real interoperability currently within that situation. And that even worsens the situation when looking at supply chain risks, when looking at economical risks, when looking at further and harder regulations which are coming up. So in my opinion, it is a necessity to build up such ecosystems in order to be able to maneuver through those hardships which are in front of us, and challenges, and turn them into opportunities. And I feel that, especially when talking to small and medium companies, because when thinking about circular economy, when thinking about this diverse group of companies which are all in this together, not only ecological but from an economical point of view, we need to build up platforms and ecosystems to enable them. And data and data systems and ecosystems especially, or platforms so to say, those are the big levers we can use in order to accelerate circular economy, enable partners, and give them the capabilities they need in order to tackle the issues ahead. So I believe ecosystems are key, and they will help us, especially with small and medium companies and partners, to really make progress here, especially when it comes to ecological topics.
Okay. Can I ask an additional question to what you just said? So with regard to you said one sentence. You said smaller players in that ecosystem probably need even more, or are pushed even more to get into that ecosystem and circular economy mode. Can you elaborate one more sentence on why do you see that, just for my better understanding?
Yeah, most of the time we're looking at those ecological challenges within the market from a regulation point of view, right? There's a battery pass coming up from the European Commission, and bigger companies are looking at that. Okay, we need to do something. But circular economy, and Holger just mentioned that is not only a topic of ecological opportunities, but also economical opportunities. Saving materials, saving costs when it comes to materials, soften hardships within the supply chain, leveraging new business models like recycling of materials, or remanufacturing materials, for instance. And this is something where those companies are really looking into. And this is why ecosystems will help them move into that and stabilize and really stabilize those shifting supply chains and really create new business opportunities then for them.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Thanks for the insight from BMW. And I would be equally curious, of course, on, I call it Team Henkel, you know that, your perspective on so where has Henkel basically started with implementing circularity, and why especially there, and what was the rationale? What was the filter, basically, the selection criteria where you said we start there and not somewhere else? Melanie, you're still not to be heard. Can you unmute? Oh, now you're unmuted. The test worked, but there's nothing better than live. That's there is nothing better than that. Okay, just retry to reconnect. Maybe Virgil, you can step in the meantime and give your perspective from Henkel.
Well, I can give you a very much. So I think Melanie would have given a very some very concrete and tasteful examples of actual implementations of actual products and the areas where that's active. What I can, of course, do is give a bit of more or less I'm singing the same chorus as the rest of the people here in the room, saying we need this data because from an IT perspective, of course, we are an enablers. We enable circular economy by, on the one hand, we provide, of course, the view onto our products as to what is in these products and how these products can lead to recycling or can be remanufactured. Remember, we're often talking about very complex products where you have components in, and this material or product passport concept simply gives the recycler or the remanufacturer the visibility of what is really in this product years and years from the date of manufacture. And we need to provide this this transparency. We need to ensure that it's there. But we also want this transparency from our suppliers. We want the standardized data, and we want these ecosystems where suppliers have the incentive to connect. Otherwise, they will, of course, have to connect with every customer, but nobody wants to do that. And we want them to deliver this transparency that we also have to provide to enable the end of life of products to actually be meaningful, to actually remanufacture, reuse, recycle these products and not actually waste them because we don't know what's in them. And at the same time, of course, I'd like to highlight another aspect which wasn't here or wasn't so much in the focus. It's a very much an operational topic as well, where you can reduce operational inefficiencies by simply having data. With data on your operations, you can reduce operational inefficiencies. So that's also one of the factors that's important to remember in circular economies, where you can impact that. And I know, Melanie, you can jump in with some placative examples of products. Yes, we hear you.
We can hear you. So,
okay, now the key is just to reconnect. Yeah, so I really like the question where we started at Henkel with implementing circular economy, because you can imagine we as an adhesive company are kind of counterproductive when it comes to circular economy, because when we bind things together, then you cannot separate them very easily. So of course here one key initiative is the debonding of materials, for example, for the battery for electric vehicles, where we are very happy to be part of the material passport support, but also, of course, when it comes, what Virgil already mentioned, when it comes to recycled bio-based materials, then of course it's really key to understand the origin, to really understand the CO2 footprint in a standardized way, and therefore it's key really to work across the entire value chain and get the data to have this ecosystem to really ensure that we have the transparency to achieve a circular economy.
Okay, thank you. And giving also first examples. That's I'm always a big fan of really having concrete examples, because we can talk a lot of buzzwords and we can talk, everybody is enthusiastic, and I don't know, Gartner sends out the next report on how many billions of euros this market will be. Nevertheless, it needs to land on the ground and needs to get started. So Holger, my question to you, because you have in your role also probably a pretty good overview on the entire market. So what is your perspective on where can more circular economies, let's say, be created, especially beyond the hype? Yeah? And I mean that serious, because it's my personal perception, but I don't like hype and buzzwording and so on, because too often then there is big disappointment following, because everybody expects huge market and very fast speed, but the reality is often slower than the predictions. So what is your overview, your perspective on it? What are the next logical steps basically, and where would you see, besides the great examples we heard from BMW or Henkel, where do you see additional implementations?
Yeah, I think building on what Virgil mentioned, I think there's part of the circular economy where it's already working pretty well. Some areas of recycling, like glass and metals, for example. Mm-hmm. I think what we would definitely want to see more is what is being referred to as the inner circles or the upper strategies. So refurbishment, reuse, refuse in some parts, where the impact that is being made, specifically in terms of sustainability, is normally higher than in the outer circles of specifically recycling. So that is one instance. But for that, as has been already mentioned, we need more data. We need more transparency. And with that comes the next step. We need the ecosystems that are able to transfer the data from company to company through supply chains, but also in value creation networks, because the circular economy will be much more networked than a linear economy. We will need to have products and specifically materials to be able to travel from one industry to the other. And for that, we also need the acceptance and the will from all the actors involved to share their data and their information to some extent.
Olga, you mentioned just the exact, again, we discussed it at the beginning, but now we discuss it again, the data exchange and the interaction and why data is so much important. Jörg and Ralf, from your perspective, from a more, I would say, technology perspective, so what is your experience? So how might data-driven approaches can really drive that circular economy? And on the opposite, not to be enthusiastic and not to be without criticism here, can it also be a blocker basically to the further development? Yeah? Because we said at the beginning it requires trust, it requires openness between the parties. So what is your experience here, and are there any also maybe differences between the continents or the countries basically? I don't know who wants to answer first, Ralf or...
Okay.
I'll be starting.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we heard data is definitely the fuel of the engine of the circular economy. I mean, this is no discussion about. If you don't have the data, you cannot move. But the major question for me is now, how can we share without losing? And this is the biggest question, depending on the verticals you are in. Sharing data without losing IP, without losing business value, without losing whatever USP as a producer or wherever you're coming from, you have in your industry. I mean, this is the major question. What type of systems, what type of information exchange, what type of trusted automation do we need here to exchange information in the way that we get the data? I mean, there's a good example. In the morning, we had the cyber breakfast here, and there's a lot of discussion about IMDS, so material exchange in the compliance area, works now 30 years. Worldwide use, nearly, without of China, but on the rest of the world, and the automotive industry could get into a standard where nearly a full declaration of products for material compliance was generated out of a regulation, out of a rule, type approval and things like this, needs to request data through the supply chain. And the system was working because there was a clear standard, a clear pressure, a clear structure behind this. And if we learn from this and transforming this, we have a lot of countries and regions where you can copy, paste more or less the idea and the learnings out of this in a much faster way, because we don't have the time to need so long in learning and explaining and exchanging. But there's a lot of things what can be used to drive this through the different countries and regions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have you experienced personally also situations where you said, hey, this is actually a blocker because I'm missing this openness between the parties, or is it more
everywhere? Specifically, I mean, we have some of the chemical industry. If you talk with the chemical industry, ask material specialists to give away 100% of his declaration. There's a huge fight and giving full data sets of a PHP or whatever product and material, because it's a lot of intellectual property behind. But at the end, if you want to recycle or refurbish, whatever, you need much more information. And this is quite the challenge now. How can you give the right parties the right kind of information and without really losing your value in or your USP in your organization? And that's a big discussion where we are ongoing everywhere. Yeah? In the automotive industry, in the compliance space, they are using so-called jokers for this. Yeah, so they are hiding some little bit of information, some maybe important information. Nobody knows exactly. And now we have coming to the question, depending on the verticals you're working in, and the industry, the country, the region, product have a lifetime from 1 day maybe, or less than a day, up to 20, 25, 30 years. So there's a lot of changes in the industry in this time. And if you have maybe information from 20 years ago, it's much less value if you don't have the full set than if you would generate it today, because you are hiding information what may be toxic today, what was 20 years not known as toxic, and you cannot recycle it in the right way. So you have to find a way how you generate the right data without losing this IP. And specifically, if you're going to Asia, in regions where they have a lot of pressure from the governmental side in the transition, and they want to know a lot of information, companies are really nervous about sharing too much information. It can be used, copy, paste, whatever, and it's a big challenge and opportunity here. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Ralf, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, I would totally agree. So I think that the main point is really it's again the trust. It's maybe not only the trust about the data I'm getting, it's the blocker is maybe more, do I trust the network to give my data into it? And that's, I think, it's major point. How can I keep ownership? How can I keep sovereignty of my data so that I'm really able to share it in such an ecosystem? And so when talking about continents or how different is it, so when we're looking in CGI and different clients, different industries, also across the countries. So it's probably a little bit less about the countries or the culture. So it's also it's maybe more different in the industries and about the complexity of the products you're sharing data. So we have, for instance, already a lot of ecosystems what we are supporting from CGI side in the energy industry, for instance, where a lot of things are happening. But if we're looking, for instance, in the manufacturing, there are very complex products, and if there is a very complex product, then there is a lot of IP in these details about the product. So if you're exchanging data about the material, about information you need for the circular economy, then it's of course much more easy to do it with a simple product where maybe the material setup is not really an IP. But if you have a product where just the information, what exact material is in it, is already an IP, then you are of course not able to share it that easily. And so one example maybe out of the Catena-X network, what I personally like is what I call one up, one down, so that even if you're exchanging data within Catena-X, you're just knowing your direct supplier. So it's just that the next tier you're getting this information, or you have a transparency who it is. But if there is a further supply network who is providing the data, you don't know the exact network. So that also not just the material, etc., also the suppliers you're using for producing this product is hidden, because that could be an IP as well. Who are your partners you're building your product with?
Yeah, very valid points. And you mentioned actually the one point which comes to my mind when you talk about again about the trust is of course we are talking now about trust between the active ecosystem partners, right? So this is something which we need to build up and ensure to exchange the information which we learned in the past minutes. Philip, I would like to have a check with you on the, I would call it the, how to say that, the external trust basically, and which can be threatened basically from outside. So just to give some additional food for thought. So we are doing each and every year, we call it Voice of Our Clients in CGI. It's a survey with almost 1,700 key decision makers around the globe. And they interestingly say cybersecurity infrastructures have been set up for internal processes and so on. Around about 70% said that. But only 29% of the clients say they have extended that, let's say, cybersecurity protection towards also the external interfaces and also the ecosystem. How do you see that? And from a BMW perspective, how do you cope with that situation? Could cybersecurity also be a threat, or would you say it will be part of, let's say, the standard delivery and delivery models within the organization and the standard interfaces? Or do we have to consider extra elements where we need to be aware of?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course it's an issue, and of course it's going to be a threat when it comes to exchanging data. Cybersecurity always is, and we as a company are heavily under attack from all sides when it comes to cybersecurity. And yet again, this is another great example for me why such ecosystems will thrive within the automotive value chain, because partners who haven't been able to invest in cybersecurity when it comes to exchanging data or outside, they will be maybe participating in such an ecosystem if this ecosystem will provide them a tool set where they get cybersecurity at least in some extent with that network delivered. And so it comes to providers like CGI and other partners when building up a network and including partners within that network, that we extend cybersecurity, data sovereignty, not only within the network or with single partners, but also to the whole ecosystem and to all partners involved. So I believe this is a chance when it comes to building up ecosystems. In the everyday life or in our everyday operations, yes, cybersecurity is an issue, and especially when it comes to smaller partners, because usually we have bigger threats, and usually there are more opportunities for hackers and people getting attacked by cybersecurity issues. When we are building up the Catena-X network currently, we will have that implemented within the code when we are looking at the open source software, when we are looking at the standards, and when we're looking at how we are wanting and willing to build up the security. But at the end, it's an end-to-end process, and partners like CGI, for instance, I believe they will help us enable not only the network, but also the partners involved. So I believe this is a great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, I agree. And I see a lot of similarities to what you said, for example, with the cloud environment and so on, yeah, where, of course, initially people said, well, there might be security issues and so on because data is hosted now somewhere else. But reality shows that the security measures in a cloud environment are typically much, much higher than what companies had in the past. Yeah, so there is always a risk to it, but I fully agree with what you said. The building up a joint ecosystem also with the support of strong partners like BMW or BASF or Henkel is also, of course, helping the other partners to really work in a stable and secure environment, which would potentially be not the case if they need to build it up by themselves. Yeah, so that's or could be also a clear accelerator to that. Good. So we're coming to the end. Unfortunately, I could continue an additional hour. I would like to ask you as a last question, all of you who are in this call, one question. So what is from your perspective the next, we can call it the next big thing to make a circular economy a success factor or a success? So, but what is from your experience really one of the key elements which we can expect, and from your perspective, in which time frame? So that I would be really curious, so we get a little bit more tangible feeling of what do you see in the market, in your personal experience, what is the next big thing? I don't know who wants to start. Virgil, maybe?
So from my perspective, I think one of the key things that will happen is that certain ecosystems and networks will get will achieve dominating roles, and with that, they will of course be enablers of driving circular economy ahead. But at the same time, they will form a sort of monopoly because they will be the platform where a lot of this exchange happens. The question I think that we all want to answer is, which one will it be, and how will that system look like?
Okay, very good food for thought. With regard to time, Melanie, your perspective on it?
Yes, is it working?
Your voice is it sounds like you had a very tough night yesterday. Your voice is breaking up, unfortunately.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
I would say that the voice quality is too poor. Sorry for that.
Okay.
Sorry for that. Jörg, your perspective on it?
Yeah, I think Holger explained it a little bit, and I love the theory about. I think if you're really thinking into circular economy, we have to think about a lot more about the next 20 years, what we have in the market, how can we refurbish, rebuild, reuse, build new business models, disrupt the actual way of thinking in the linear industry here. And I really hope that people are starting more thinking in this way. How can we keep the products we have in the moment? And not only thinking about new designs, new models, new structures, really thinking about what's in the market and how can we keep this up and running, and what system, what data do we need to have with nice startups to really use much longer and a higher level the products we have in the existing area today.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Ralf, your perspective?
Well, I would see it more from a, system integration point of view, maybe. So what I'm seeing as really an important step, what has to happen is when we're looking at manufacturing and all these suppliers who are belonging to it and have to work with this ecosystem, how to really enable the smaller and the mid-sized companies, because the big ones, well, they have the financial strengths and the resources to really work on such standards and doing software development, etc. But if it comes to the smaller suppliers, they just have to click in, and that's interesting how this will come up then the next time as well.
Okay, thank you. And Philip, next big thing, next big step.
Well, the next step is, and Holger and Jörg said it, we need to focus on the inner cycles, because we will have small and impactful use cases there, business models there. Recycling is great, and this will help us, and this will be the next thing after the next thing. But this is way more complicated. This will take way more time, and the smaller cycles will scale faster, I believe, and we will include and can include, because they are not that hard to accelerate, because you don't need so much data, not so much parties are involved. We can scale this on all several levels, and we can include small and medium companies. So first of all, I believe let's focus on those inner cycles. They will scale fast, and then the recycling industry, they will come after, and they will be even bigger, and this will be the next step after the next step.
Okay, so thanks for that valuable insight. I would like to thank everybody for this session today. Thanks for your insights. I really appreciate your also, hands-on mentality, in the sense of not just talking theoretically about that, which we see a lot already, but I really liked your real-life examples. So a big thank you to everyone. We will, of course, promote the recording here, so people will also be able to review the statements you've made. I really like to thank you, and see you next time on this very important topic of circular economy. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.